Hey, welcome. This is Off the Couch, where psychology meets everyday life. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, and I am here with Zoe Yeoman, etiquette expert. Hey, Zoe.
Hi, Dr. Greg.
And producer Brian Gomez. Hey, Brian.
Happy Monday, guys.
And we're going to be talking about a lot of cool stuff today. This week, we're going to be talking about, do men want more than one partner? Well, we have some research to back up what they might say. Are douchey men more attractive to women? And the kind of man that women are actually looking for. Plus, did the pandemic make your social phobia worse? And then in Psychology in the News, the Pope makes an important pronouncement that will affect the mental health of millions. And lastly, do people overestimate the social consequences of saying no to an invitation? We'll have expert Zoe, etiquette expert Zoe, tell us and give us helpful advice about how to say no when we don't want to go. All right, so let's go on and let's talk about the homework. We left off with some homework. One thing to make you happy this week. Did you guys do one of the following? Spend time in solitude, say hello to a stranger, go to a museum, or hug your pet? Zoe?
None of the above.
None.
Took my 1977 out for a ride. Slow ride.
Well, did that bring you joy?
Oh, it so did. It
Well,
always
then,
does. Yes.
Right on. I'm glad to hear that. And what about you, Brian? I already know what you did.
Yeah, I did everything but the museum. I had to spend time alone because of my pup. I've been having to hug her because she's being a baby. She got fixed on Thursday, so it's been a lot. We've been spending a lot of time together, so I did everything but the museum.
Well, now that you have her, you're not really spending time alone or in solitude.
Oh, that's true. But when I do get that time alone, wow.
When she goes to sleep.
I definitely spent some time alone. I forgot. I spent some time alone. I did do that.
Well, really in solitude, and I spend time alone, and I want to parse that a little bit because I spend a lot of time alone, but really like enjoying that time alone, really being in solitude. That's the key to really bask in it. But
I turned on Die Hard yesterday. The movie. Something just said, I want to watch Die Hard because, Christmas movie. And like for the first 10 minutes, I was like crying off and on because Bruce is so sick. And, I just feel so bad. But then I had a great time with it and it was fun.
Well, yeah, he is a progressive form of it's cognitive decline that it's fairly rare, I believe. I'll have to look it up. We'll talk about it one day, but it's unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, so I was alone, but I was entertained.
You certainly were. And, I have to laugh about Die Hard being a Christmas movie, that there's a huge debate about it. And once I did a radio show a while back, a couple of years, maybe several years ago, and the guy at the end said, so here's the question for you. Die Hard, Christmas movie or action movie? And I was like, well, there's a Christmas tree in it. I don't. And he goes,
it's a Christmas party.
That's what he said. He goes, you're exactly right. It's a Christmas movie. So, have you seen it, Brian?
I have not,
sadly,
but I have heard plenty of references that I feel like I've seen it. I know.
It's the best.
Maybe I'll watch it this week.
I hope you will.
Well, let's get to the studies. What do men want and what do women want? We're going to try to figure out at least 3 studies that were released this week. Kind of tell us some new answers in really kind of curious ways. But let's talk about it. The first is a study done of 393 heterosexual men and women in the UK. This is done by Swansea University. Swansea University is a public school in Wales, and it's a very, very good college. And they published this in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, and it revealed that 1/3 of United Kingdom men are open to the idea of having more than one wife or long-term girlfriend. Not surprising to you, Zoe?
Are you kidding me? I'm not surprised, Dr. Greg.
Well, can you guess how many women actually said they're open to the idea of a polygamous marriage if it were legal and consensual?
sometimes I think, boy, it would be great to have a wife.
Well, there you go. We're going to talk about what that might be. There's a term for that. If you have a wife in the marriage, but would you be willing to share her with your husband? And we're going to
absolutely.
Right on. So yeah, only about 1 in 10 UK women are open to the idea of a polygamous marriage. But that's putting ourselves in the middle. Both times those questions were asked, they were actually having the men imagining having more than one wife, and both times, and the women having more than one husband. But when you flip it and you say, can you imagine sharing? Can you imagine sharing with your husband another wife? Or can you imagine sharing if you're a man with another husband? Only 9% of men said they would share with another partner. So it went down quite a bit. They're 3.5 times more likely to want multiple women versus multiple men in a relationship. And then only 5% of women, so they went down by half, of women said they would share a partner with another woman. Interesting. So I wanted to talk about some terms really quickly. I just thought this was kind of fun. Polygamy, when we talk about it, a lot of people aren't really clear on the terms, and sometimes it's just good to be clear on the terms. Polygamy is more than one wife or husband at the same time. It comes from the late Greek word polygumia. Of course, I'm probably butchering that, which means a state of marriage to many spouses. Polygyny is more than one female mate. So if you had a wife, Zoe, that's what you'd be practicing, is polygyny.
Interesting. Thank you.
It's always good to know the terms. And then polyandry is having more than one male mate. And we talk about polyamory, which I hear a lot people talking about now. Polyamory is the act or a practice of engaging in multiple romantic and typically sexual relationships. The difference in polyamory is it's often used as a term to say you love this person and this person loves that person, and you also have that person over there. So it's this kind of more complex relationship that term is often used for.
It's much love, many loves.
I always say that we have endless love to give around, but not endless time. So it can get tough no matter what. Okay, now I thought this was the most fun study I've come across in quite a while. What do you guys think of when someone calls a man a douche? What do you think of? Like, what is the image that flops into your head?
A pickup truck, a gym mirror selfie, the tank top for sure.
Ooh.
Probably a horrible haircut that I don't like. But yeah, or really rude. It has to be rude. Probably doesn't pick up the towels from the gym, after they use them. That's very much what I think of douchey.
Very specific imagery, Brian. Very specific. How about you, Zoe?
A little judgy. You're being a little judgy today,
I love it. I love it. How about you, Zoe?
Oh, rude.
Rude.
Sure. Entitled, has to be the center of attention. In all things, whether it's how he's dressed or what he drives or how he behaves out. Yeah, that's just...
Tacky seems to be a good word, I would feel like.
What about when you see a guy on Instagram who's standing in front of an expensive sports car, thumbs raised in the air like this? What do you think? Does that make him look hot?
Well, it depends on if he's at the dealership and just taking pictures, or if he makes $50,000 and lives in his mother's basement and is driving that car. That's when I always wonder. But if he's doing well for himself and he just bought himself a present, then good for him.
Interesting, Zoe. What about you, Brian?
I can see the same thing as Zoe was saying, but there's also a good way to go about it without presenting it like you're showing off. That douchey attitude is when you're like, look at me and look what I got, and then you can be like, oh, look how hard I've worked to get this in a way,
Yeah. I have a universally negative reaction to that person, but probably because I'm not looking for someone to support me. Maybe, I don't know, but I look at that and go, blah. when I see a guy standing in front of an expensive car. But turns out I'm in the minority. Let's talk. A new study from a team of behavioral scientists at the Federal Université Rio Grande do Norte in Brazil, again, my Portuguese was really lacking, published in the journal Personality and Individual Differences. They took 2 surveys of people who drove expensive cars. And the first survey, I thought this was really cool. They asked about luxury cars and the men who drive them. They not only asked about the men who drive them, they wanted to look at mating values and male dominance. The team received 171 responses, 93 from women, 78 from men. So a lot of men were responding to this too. And they used these fabricated examples. Now, we do this in research to control the outcome. So we can't just blame what are your attitudes based on this, that, or what, something else. They gave 4 examples in this particular study. And I looked up the cars they used because I was super interested in knowing exactly what these cars were. And one of them was like a truck like Brian is describing, which I wouldn't typically associate as a luxury car, but this might be just cultural. Like this might be a highly desired car in Brazil.
Some of those things are as expensive as a condo, those trucks.
Yeah, I don't know within that economy. Yeah. I trust the survey or the researchers' choice, though, that these were highly desirable. Anyway, and then they asked another survey. So then they did that with this control, and then they did a second survey. They asked luxury car owners how they felt about themselves and their place in society, and they asked whether they'd make a better mate than someone who drove an ordinary car. Believe it or not. They got 409 responses, 203 from men, 209 from women, just to show you they were asking both sexes, both genders. And what did they find? The majority of respondents, both male and female, viewed men driving luxury vehicles as having 1, higher mating value. You're absolutely right, Brian and Zoe. You absolutely are in the majority. They have higher social dominance, more competent in their lives and jobs, and in some cases, even more intelligent. How about that?
I'm not buying it.
I don't know if all those is
really, because I've always thought that a guy standing in front of a sports car thumbs up is just a notification of all kinds of insecurity, but apparently it's quite a piece of bait on the line.
Oh, this is so like, Brian, don't you think this is very generational, maybe?
I think so. And especially we see it here in LA a lot
Right.
with our culture here, where it's like you have to have a specific kind of car. You have to look a specific kind of way. You have to hang out with specific kind of people in order to fit that mold of, I guess, acceptance here in LA. And it's kind of sucks because it's a lot of pressure, but it's like, yeah, I mean, according to the study, it's showing what the people want.
I hear this too. I hear this from people, and mostly people who moved here. I grew up here. It is a difference, and you see very much a difference because I have friends with a great deal of money, and they drive used cars, pretty normally boring cars, Priuses. I mean, that's the great equalizer car out there. But people drive pretty boring cars. I think, I drive a cheap version of an expensive car, I guess. And, I wondered if even that would count, but I doubt it would. People know how much things cost here.
Well, I mean, I think women love dudes who drive nice cars. Like, what's not to like? But I married somebody like who could care less about the car that he drove. Like from the first time we really even started dating, he just was not that guy. I'm the gearhead in the family. I'm the one who wants a nice car. But so that was never him. And that's just one more example of his how secure he is with himself.
Yeah, no, that would actually, I think, would intrigue me. So I think that's good choice there, Zoe.
And a lot of the times here in town too, you see a lot of guys with like these really nice expensive cars, but most of those are rented. A lot of those are tourists too that are renting nice cars, and they're driving around and looking really cool. But a lot of people don't know that those are all rented most of the time.
No, I learned that lesson very young. Here in LA, of course, you've been out here, Zoe, you know, but a lot of people judge by the car you drive here, and it's really weird. And I remember once I had a friend who lived in a tiny, I'm not kidding, studio apartment, and had a large Range Rover, which he basically devoted his entire paycheck to. Sure. And he told me, "Oh no, I need to make a good impression, an external impression, to get ahead." And I was like rolling my eyes. I was actually really surprised when I was very young. We pulled up at some valet, and people were like, "Oh, this Range Rover, et cetera, et cetera." They're beautiful cars. They're amazing cars. So I have nothing against them, but I was perhaps naive to the, how people responded.
I will tell you, Dr. Greg, my father taught me when I was very young that it's absolutely inappropriate to own and drive a very expensive car when you when you don't own your own home, or you don't, rent. But I lived there in my early 20s. Uh-huh. And one of the reasons I left was because I was like, I can't afford a really nice car, and it's like where you live, what you drive, and all of that. And I was just like, this place isn't for me right now. I'll come back.
Right on. Right on. Well, it's a good thing you didn't, because people who drive expensive cars or luxury cars, at least in Brazil here, but I think it can translate, often see themselves in some rather grand ways. They see themselves as having higher social status. They believe they have more self-confidence than other people, and they rate themselves as having a higher mating value. So that could be a test for narcissism. I don't know.
Sounds like it.
Can't pay his rent, but God, he's got a nice car.
Oh, we're going to talk about the perfect partner. And Zoe, we're going to lean on you a little bit, because this particular study, 17,245 single heterosexual women, I know you're not single, but single heterosexual women were surveyed around the globe from 147 countries. This is called the Ideal Partner Survey. I thought this was great. They did look at some lesbian and bisexual women who were part of the survey, but the majority were in the heterosexual group. This was done by the University of Göttingen. That's in Germany, along with Indiana University and the Queen's University in Belfast. And this was published in the journal Human Nature. And it looked at a complex relationship between age and partner preference. So they actually looked at several things with preferences. They didn't find a lot of variation, and we're going to talk about, in fact, I'll just skip ahead. Some of the things they found no variation whatsoever, but were still important, were things like kindness and supportiveness, attractiveness, financial security and successfulness, and education and intelligence. Those were all equally important to women across the board. So we can kind of take those off the map. And then they really wanted to see what's the deal with age. And they found that most people showed no variation between women of different ages, which is kind of good. However, as you started to get older, women started to show a preference for confident and assertive partners. They wanted a confident, assertive partner. I suppose driving a luxury car too. Who knows? And as well as acceptance for a larger age range. So they're willing to go much younger than perhaps they would have when they're younger.
Interesting.
Yes. Did you guys see May, December, by the way?
No, not yet.
I highly recommend it. I thought it was great. It's interesting. It's a Todd Haynes movie. He's a very provocative filmmaker. But what it did is it somewhat paralleled the Mary Kay Letourneau story out of Washington. And this was a very interesting, older woman. I think he was in 7th grade. I think is in 6th or 7th grade in the story. And she basically has an affair with him, and then you discover them when they're married, living, etc., etc. And they touch on some of the psychological issues in this particular thing, and it also goes in some different directions. It was just a really interesting and compelling movie, and I will say that it's one of the movies that a lot of people have said, I need to talk about that more, because it brings up a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah. So how parenting intentions also play a role. What do you think when people say they want someone who intends to have kids? What would be the age people would want to have kids?
Oh,
just stumped you both.
I know, because I wouldn't want to have kids until I'm like 40.
No, other people, maybe not you.
Oh.
Well, I was
Women.
going to say, the universe, God kind of took that away from us. I think people are ready when they're 50, and that's when they should have kids.
They're ready, but they're super tired.
But they're so tired. or there are no eggs. So ideally I would say much older, but physiologically.
It's interesting. The public perception is most think women want children who want children. It's to be the people who want them. Usually goes till about 40 or even 50 years old. And there certainly are examples of that. My sister is one who had children late in life and is very happy to have done that. Mm-hmm. But parenting intentions on the Ideal Partner survey are of high importance only until about 28 years old. And then it starts to wane for most women. Fascinating.
I believe that. I went from wanting 6 to 4 to 2. And by the time I got married at 33, I couldn't have cared less.
Well, it's, I think you parallel the exact dynamic they were finding in this study. Now, this is across many, many different countries, many different cultures. Of course, there's going to be some preferences. Some countries that were surveyed more, the U.S. and the U.K. and Europe and Australia all got a lot more surveys. But it really was interesting to me that there was just this consistency across the board. It was kind of fascinating.
With age comes some wisdom.
With age comes wisdom, we hope at least, huh? So social phobia and COVID-19 pandemic, I thought this was kind of fun because we always hear about social phobia now, especially in our younger generation, Gen Z people. And overall, this study found, this was done by Peking University in Beijing, China. Peking University, so you guys know, is like one of the top universities in all of China, and I think it's among the top universities in the world. I think it's at least in the top 40, which is saying a lot. So it's a very, very good school. Overall, social phobia is increasing in our modern era, especially among youth. I don't think that was their finding, but that's just to give you a background. They did a study and they published it in scientific reports. But let's talk about social phobia worse, because it may not be clear exactly what it is. Some people call things social phobia. Like I see these shirts that say, I'm a member of the antisocial social club or something like that. If they knew, antisocial doesn't mean having social phobia, or it doesn't even mean you don't want to be around people. It means you're going against people. It means you're a sociopath, essentially. But all these people wear those t-shirts and the sweatshirts. It is kind of a fun play on words, but that isn't the correct use of the words. They would have to say the asocial social club, but that just doesn't roll off the tongue, does it? So let's talk about social phobia. It's an excessive fear of social situations. I'm not going to give you the clinical definition, but this is essentially what it is. It includes attracting attention to yourself. It also is highly active in new situations, and when you're around unfamiliar people, you start to feel more and more aware of yourself. And often people with social phobia, they really go into their own head and they start to think other people are judging them negatively. And then that starts to really do a number on them. They start to think about how they're moving and acting, and you just start to really get in on yourself. An estimated 7.1% of adults have social anxiety or have had it in the last year. So it's a very high incidence of anxiety disorder. And past prevalence of social anxiety among adults was higher for females than males, which is maybe not such a surprise, except when we get to one of the findings of this study. According to a 2022 study, this is the study we're talking about at Peking University. This is another study. I'm sorry. This is just to underline. According to a 2022 study, 26% of adolescents presented with intense self-reported social fears. That is 1/4 of people. They may not meet social anxiety disorder, but these are people who have intense social fears in our young people, adolescents. This was published in the International Journal of Environmental Research of Public Health. Scary. So this survey done by Peking University, it was done with just Chinese college students, and they used the social interaction anxiety scale and the social phobia scale. And these are major scales. And they measured 2 time periods, both pre-COVID-19 and early COVID-19. They looked at the period from April 2020 to August of 2021. Remember that time we were all locked indoors, all that stuff. And it measured whether social phobia increased, decreased, or stayed the same. Pretty basic. What do you think? Well, we already know where this is going. Approximately 44% of social phobia symptoms in people intensified. So 44% of people, it intensified or increased. Their social phobia symptoms got worse. That makes a lot of sense because when you look at how to treat anxiety disorders, including social phobia, one of the most important aspects is getting exposure. So if you're not having exposure to other human beings, your feelings might get much worse. But 28% had no significant change, and 29% of social phobia symptoms decreased, which also made sense to me because they're not having someone they're having to react around. So they're literally saying, oh, I'm not around any kind of threatening person or person who might judge me, so be it. I don't feel as bad. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So what I loved about this study is they looked at factors that made social phobia worse. So when it got worse, these were people who tended to have a lower GPA, a higher frequency of bullying experience, permissive parenting style, which made a lot of sense to me because permissive parenting style is often tied to anxiety disorders. It's sort of like they didn't learn things are going to be okay, and that they have the skill to get through. Distant relationships with family members, having 1 to 2 siblings. I don't know how that factors in, but there you go. Higher frequency of childhood adversity, and mobile phone dependence, of course. So,
yeah. The pacifier, the great pacifier.
The great pacifier, exactly right. So factors that were protective. Female gender. So I said earlier that we have higher incidence in women, but here in this particular study, they showed that female gender was actually protective from getting worse, which was interesting. Status as a college senior or postgraduate, so educated, highly satisfied with their physical appearance, which makes a lot of sense because people who are satisfied with their physical appearance have less trouble going in public and don't feel like other people are judging them because of their physical appearance. Also, a strong self-perception of mental health, or a self-perception of strong mental health, and a moderate trust in strangers. And if I remember, both of you didn't have trust in strangers. Don't I remember that?
Yeah,
from an earlier
true.
show that we did? Yeah, well, so you got the female gender and all the rest, but the moderate trust in strangers, I'll be the one that'll bring up that rear. Okay, so now we're going to talk about psychology in the news. Today, I prepare things and then something comes out the day we do the show and I have to change it. Gotcha. So today, the Vatican issued a declaration Monday, December 18th that said Pope Francis of the Roman Catholic Church is now allowing priests, bishops, and deacons to bless same-sex couples. This, to me, was momentous, especially when you know the damage that many people within the Catholic religion have suffered, and the kind of negative attitudes and discrimination, which we've also talked about earlier, people within the church have suffered. So this was really a momentous thing. Wait, were either of you guys raised Catholic?
Yeah, I grew up Catholic as a kid, and
Oh,
Guilty.
all three of us. All three of us in the Supreme Court. So we all know what the Catholic Church is capable of. And, you know, I think there are a lot of very good things. And I thought this was one of the really wonderful things. He wants to move, this Pope wants to move away from a rigid church, which I think a lot of people suffer. And, you know, remember at the end of the show, we always talk about be flexible. That is in response to being rigid. We know that flexibility is at the root of all mental health, and being rigid is at the root of all mental illness. And we can really make a case for this. This is our thought patterns being rigid or being flexible. And flexibility is always the way to go. So he is actually trying to move the church away from a rigid church to a pastoral church. Just so you know, I had to look this up because I'm like, I don't know what a pastoral church is. It's exactly what you would think of as a wonderful church. It's comforting the sick and the widowed, lending a shoulder to cry on, giving support to the needy. It's actually doing those traditional things to support people and give them comfort and aid. So,
what it was intended to do.
What it was intended to do. And I think this is what the church really excels at, and why these organizations can really make a big difference. But it can also cause a lot of people pain, and it has to this community for many years. Now, this isn't the same as a marriage, which you guys know, but I'm telling our audience, there are 7 sacraments within the Catholic Church. Now, you can't get all of them because either you get married or you get ordained. I mean, you got to make a choice at some point. But we all, through the Catholic Church, have to go through these series of steps. And I was never clear as like, is it absolutely necessary to get into heaven? Because when I was a kid, that was what we were taught. But I'm not sure what the current philosophy is. But
I think that's the same, probably.
It's probably the same. But
sure.
Marriage is a sacrament, which means it's one of these very, very key blessings that's received in the midst of a ritual. So here, marriage. But so it's not blessing the same-sex marriage. It's blessing a same-sex relationship, which is a very different thing, but I still thought it was pretty wonderful. And it's a huge step toward inclusion. Or I think the word's blessing the same-sex couples. So I don't know if that's a real parsing of words, because the relationship might be a little something different than the couple.
No one have a priest on speed dial?
Do you know I've worked with many priests. I've given last rites with priests. They're incredible, really wonderful, like really, really wonderful. And I can't go on about all the positives I can say. I know that but these priests were willing to go the extra mile and do the extra work to really bring in people in their flock. And every priest I knew was practicing pastoral, what is it, church. Yeah, I want to say pastoral therapy, but you know what I mean, as opposed to.
So I think it's like baptism, First Communion.
Yes,
you get me.
So
That's
baptism. Let's go through them. So our audience knows. I don't even think these are the proper names, but yes, you're going to get baptism. Then you do the confession and penance, because you have to clear your soul. That is a sacrament.
That's a sacrament, right?
Then you get First Holy Communion.
Communion is when you're like 10 or 11.
That's when you take the Eucharist.
Right,
it's the little bread wafer, so people know. It's like a little wax disc, and it sticks to the top of your mouth, and you're trying to get it off, and then I was worried the whole time. I had God stuck to the roof of my mouth.
Oh my
this
God.
is a little kid. You know, when you're in second grade, you have these thoughts, and you're already dealing with a tremendous amount of guilt being Catholic, so you know how guilty I felt having God stuck to the roof of my mouth. But it finally dissolved, and I remember it was a mildly traumatic experience as I'm walking back to the
pew.
The pew. Thank you. Oh my God. And just So anyway, you have the First Holy Communion. You do the confession. You have the baptism. You have the confirmation. Right?
Oh, confirmation.
Confirmation.
Yes.
Which I got confirmed. Did you guys get confirmed?
No, I was going to ask you guys where you guys stopped, because I only got baptized.
Yeah, I went all the way through confirmation, So I think we're at like 5 now, and I don't, and marriage, and then
Confirmation, marriage, and then last rites, which you
last
can't.
rites.
It's administering to the sick, or I forget how it's worded, but it's yeah. And then the other one is getting ordained as a priest. So of course you can't get ordained as a priest unless if you're married. So they
We did it. Look, we did it.
Look at that. Our
3 recovering
our
cats.
catechism is holding up strong. I wouldn't say that, but
My
there you
mom
go.
would be proud of us.
Hey.
So catechism, for those who don't know, it's the teaching of the Catholic doctrine. And you have to go through, if you don't go to Catholic school, you have to go to Catholic schooling. So it's after school classes. I suppose it's the same as Hebrew class
Of course it is.
in
Of course it is.
in
That's
Jewish
what we do.
religion. Yeah.
Torah and all that. Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting because just on October 31st, the Pope also issued a document making it clear that transgender people may be baptized, may serve as godparents, and may be witnesses at church weddings. So we're seeing a more inclusive church. So I thought this was really wonderful. And now I'm going to move on to something about me, just to go very quickly. I went to a party last night, and everyone was really into my shoes. And I just had to laugh because I kept saying to people, I've worn these shoes many Christmases, Christmas shoes. I will show you them in just a second. They're Christmas shoes. I've never had anyone give me compliments about these shoes, but people were going nuts. Now, this was a Hollywood party, and so there are people who might follow trends a little bit more closely. And I felt so good about my shoes suddenly. I mean, literally no one's ever liked them, except me. And then, so I wear them anyway, I don't care. But having all that positive reinforcement had me feeling very proud of my shoes. And so I'm like, I'm going to wear it to the studio because I'm going to show off my shoes. And then I saw this Wall Street Journal article today. And this is literally last night. Then I see this article today, and I have the article somewhere, but it's basically that kids are going crazy over this character right here. Oh, I'll show you my shoe. This is Snoopy right here, and these are Christmas shoes, and there's a Christmas Snoopy that right now, because of TikTok, is getting completely sold out, and all these people are going on a mad dash for Snoopy stuff. And then I understood why everyone liked my shoes.
Oh, well, Dr. Greg, adorable. You're so fancy. I love it.
I'm either very much ahead of the curve, or everything old is new again. I just don't know.
You should be on TikTok from now on.
Yeah. Okay. So
Make a video later.
But what really fascinated me about that was just that the power of positive reinforcement. It made me feel good. I felt good about it, and I wanted to repeat the behavior. Positive reinforcement is literally, it's not what you think. It's not saying something good necessarily to somebody. It's when you do something and the behavior you would do a behavior like here, me wearing the shoes, and then somebody says something like, oh, nice shoes, or they let you in a special thing, or you get some privilege, or who knows, you get money. That acts as a positive reinforcer if the behavior tends to repeat. So we judge the behavior by if it repeats. Then when I saw that Wall Street Journal article, I thought, oh, I can't wear the shoes today. And then I thought, oh, wait, I'm overriding myself. I'm going to wear them anyway and just talk about it. But the power of positive reinforcement, it's something to pay attention to. And it acted unconsciously on me without even realizing it.
Good choice. I like them. Do you like them, Brian?
I do. They're cool. If you're into that. No, they're cool. They're cool. They're cool.
Exactly.
They're perfect for the season.
I like them on Dr. Greg.
No, they're actually cool. I even like the shoe too. I like the band.
I like to celebrate Christmas, so sometimes I go there. So, in addition to Christmas being a time when we dress up, it's also a time when we may get invitations to things. So, what if you don't? Do you guys get invitations you don't want to go to?
Mm-hmm. Especially since I'm staying home this Christmas. Friends are like, oh, I'm going to my mom's if you want to come with, or do you want to come over? And I'm just like, I kind of enjoy spending it alone if I'm not going home, you know?
Plus, you have a
The
you have
pup,
a pupper.
yeah. I can't bring her everywhere, and especially since she's, healing right
So
now.
when you say no, do you worry about what they're going to think?
I try to avoid saying no. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, like let me figure it out," and then I'll wait till like it gets really close, and then it's like, "Oh, I can't." So it gets even worse instead of just saying no in the beginning. So I'm one of those.
So it may feel rude, it may feel unforgivable to reject an invitation. It may feel that way, but according to research by the American Psychological Association, of which I'm a member, I think I need to disclose that, and published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, which is one of the top journals, more than 3/4 or 77% of respondents in a pilot study confessed that accepting an invitation to an activity they did not want to attend. And they said it was because they were concerned about the consequences of declining. I have to say, I identified with that finding. I'm definitely in the 3/4. I've said yes to things because I'm like, I don't want to say no. I don't want to be rude to the person. I don't want to, it's like I feel really bad. They went to all this trouble to have a party and, like I'm the crucial member of, person walking through the door. But it's like you put a lot of weight on yourself and you feel guilt. So you might say yes to things you otherwise don't want to say yes to.
That's true.
Now, to examine whether the fears of saying no were unfounded, the researchers conducted 5 experiments with more than 2,000 participants. So one of the experiments, just to give you an idea of how they did this, they had one scenario where someone invites another one out to go see a celebrity chef. And one group is told to imagine turning down the invitation due to plans during the day and wanted to stay home and relax. And the other group is told to imagine giving the invitation and told the friend, the other group is told to imagine giving the invitation, like inviting the person to the celebrity chef, and then they're told their friend is turning them down for the same reason, that they just want to stay home and relax. Well, participants who imagined turning down their friend's invitation often believed it would have an immediate negative impact on their relationship. So I've certainly been there. They were more likely to say their friend would feel angry, disappointed, and unlikely to invite them to attend future events. But participants who were rejected felt something a little different. They were actually less likely to feel the way people did, the way people predicted they would feel. They were not as angry. They were not as disappointed. They were even thinking about future events. They may have been irritated, they may have been disappointed in a not huge way, but they didn't hold it against the person overall.
Right.
I thought that was pretty clear. But then, you're thinking, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking they just did a scenario. Well, they did the study a different way. So they did a study a different way, and they looked at some different things, and this was repeated with 80 real-life couples. And the 80 real-life couples were basically, they had one couple say, let's do this, and they instructed the other one to turn them down. Now, again, you could make a case, oh, well, they're the couples, etc. They were together all lengths of time, these couples, but it was just interesting to me that the couples, again, repeated the same finding. They kept finding this over and over again. What they found is that people who rejected the invitation were more likely than those who were rejected to say their friend would focus on the rejection. So the people like me who would stay home and go, oh, I don't want to offend them, I'll go to this event. We would worry that they would be upset about the rejection. But what other people tend to do is to focus a little bit more on the deliberations that went on in their head. It seems like other people are more empathic, which is nice. I thought that was kind of nice. So they do think about us. So what are the benefits of turning down invitations once in a while? It prevents you from burnout. Burnout, which is a very significant thing and happens to a lot of people during the holidays. So Zoe, let's talk about how to say no, because this goes beyond the study. We got to have the skill. So tell us about, how do you turn down someone with the least negative impact while still showing consideration and respect?
Well, this is something I had to learn how to do, because I'm not a great liar. So I always start with a thank you. Oh my gosh, that's so kind. That sounds like fun. That little bit. And then you hit them with we already have plans. I have a big morning the next day. I won't get home until, such and such time today, so I'm not going to make it. Any number of things. You can do it that way. The other thing would be just to say, I appreciate the invitation again, but I just can't be there. I can't make it. And that's all.
Okay. Good.
That's all.
Yeah, there's a principle we teach often. It's about being assertive, and I teach it in this order, which is basically say the reason why, be truthful, of course. Of course, we know that's a key with, as we know, we talked about with.
I don't know that you need to give a reason why, other than saying time-wise, I can't be there.
Well, then that's a reason. I mean, you just want to say a reason why.
Very good.
And then you want to turn down the invitation, I guess, or you want to say what you want, but show respect for the other person, which your answers clearly did. You were modeling, showing concern and caring for the other person.
Yes, because it's better to turn down an invitation instead of going, feeling bullied, feeling like you got roped into it, getting there, not having a good time for whatever reason. That's not serving yourself. That's not setting boundaries for yourself. I mean, your own, meeting your own needs. And then sometimes, surprisingly enough, you'll go and you'll end up having a great time. And you're like, I'm really glad I came to this thing because I didn't think I was going to enjoy myself. But then I did. So
I like how you said setting boundaries for yourself, Zoe. I feel like we aren't great at doing that most of the time, where we need those boundaries to kind of protect ourselves from, like you said, Dr. Greg, burnout, because a lot of us will try to do it all. And I feel like sometimes I truly want to do it and go to the event or party, but then when it comes close to it, I'm like, I don't want to go anymore. I'm kind of like, I changed my mind.
I think that happens to all of us, kind of like I wish I had said I was busy or otherwise engaged. But I have felt bullied on numerous occasions into going to something that I didn't really want to go to, and I just don't allow that to happen anymore.
Right on. Right on. I've got something built into me. If somebody starts to bully me to go to an event, I'll try. That's an easy no to me. It's like,
and a hard
nope.
no.
It's a hard no. But people usually are quite considerate and wonderful. And I think you're right, Zoe, too. If you do make the choice to go, I've always held this. Like, I go and I just enjoy myself. Like, I throw myself into it and I just have a good time. And the reality is we often rise to the occasion. So that's, if you go, just choose to be there rather than thinking I could have stayed home tonight, and then you'll just have a terrible time.
Well put. Well said.
Well, that wraps up our show for today. Kind of a fun show, we do say. Maybe we learned some interesting lessons about mating and dating and God knows what.
And saying no.
So this is Dr. Greg. And Zoe and Brian bidding you farewell. Until next time, I want you to be present, flexible, and kind. Bye-bye.